The annual Henderson Foundation Charity Ball was the event of the season in New York. Under crystal chandeliers and against a backdrop of orchestral music, the elite of Manhattan swirled in designer clothes worth more than some people's yearly salaries. Jackson Pierce, 32-year-old tech mogul and founder of Pierce Innovations, stood by the bar watching the spectacle with practiced disinterest. His custom-tailored Armani suit and carelessly tousled dark hair projected exactly the image he wanted. Successful, but not trying too hard. The Forbes article last month estimating his net worth at $2.8 billion meant he didn't have to try at all. "You're 9 o'clock," whispered Bradley, his chief of staff. The Reynolds Group. Their R&D department would be a perfect acquisition target. Jackson nodded, taking another sip of his whiskey. "Set up a meeting for next week. Tonight, I'm supposed to be charitable, not predatory." "Of course," Bradley said with a slight smirk. "Speaking of which, you promised to dance with at least 3 major donors tonight. Good publicity." Jackson suppressed a groan. "Fine, line them up." His first 2 dances went smoothly, perfunctory movements with women who giggled and batted, eyelashes at him while their husbands looked on approvingly, dollar signs practically visible in their eyes. Everyone wanted a piece of Jackson Pierce. As he walked off the dance floor, the string quartet suddenly hit a sour note. At the same moment, a server carrying a tray of appetizers tripped over someone's foot. Jackson instinctively reached out to steady the falling server, only to collide with someone else who had the same idea. The result was catastrophic. Jackson found himself tangled with a woman in a modest navy dress, both of them covered in tiny quiches and sauce. As they separated, the woman's glasses flew off her face and shattered on the marble floor. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, squinting helplessly, her hands patting the air around her. "I can't see a thing without those." Jackson stared at her, momentarily stunned. She wasn't conventionally attractive. Her hair was pulled back. In a severe bun, her face was plain with no makeup, and her posture was hunched as if trying to disappear. But something about her panicked, earnest expression made him pause. "It's fine," he heard himself say. "These things happen." Bradley appeared at his side with a napkin. "Mr. Pierce, let's get you cleaned up immediately." "Just a moment," Jackson said, surprising himself. He reached down and gently took the woman's elbow. "You're missing glasses. Let me help." "I'm Linda Keller," she said, squinting up at him. "I work in the research department at Memorial Hospital. I'm so sorry about—"
"Your suit."
"Jackson Pierce," he replied, watching as her face showed no recognition of his name. That was refreshing. "Would you like to dance?" he asked suddenly, confusing even himself. "Dance? Now? But I can't see, and we're both covered in appetizers." "Perfect time for a dance," he insisted, guiding her to the floor as the crowd parted, whispering and pointing. For once, Jackson didn't care what anyone thought. As they began to move, Linda stepped on his feet twice before finding her rhythm. "I should warn you," she whispered. "I'm a terrible dancer even when I can see." Jackson laughed, a genuine laugh. That surprised him. "Then we'll be terrible together." For the next 3 minutes, something strange happened. As they danced awkwardly across the floor, Linda told him about her research in pediatric medicine. No flirting, no angling for investments, just passionate talk about helping children with rare diseases. When the music ended, Jackson realized he'd been smiling the entire time. "Thank you for the dance," Linda said, adjusting her sauce-stained dress. "Now I should probably find my colleague who brought me and go home before I cause any more disasters." "Wait," Jackson said. "Let me give you my card, if you need new glasses." Linda accepted it with a confused smile. "That's kind, but insurance will cover them." "Right, of course." Jackson felt strangely disappointed. As she walked away, Bradley appeared at his side. "That was unexpected. Are you okay?" "Schedule a tour of Memorial Hospital's research facilities for next week," Jackson said, watching Linda's retreating figure. May I ask why? Bradley looked confused. Jackson straightened his ruined tie. I think I just met the most honest person in Manhattan, and I want to know more. Little did he know that Linda was already in the taxi, holding his business card, wondering if she'd just hallucinated dancing with the most intriguing man she'd ever met. Memorial Hospital's fluorescent lights cast an unflattering glow over everyone, except apparently Jackson Pierce. Linda watched from behind her new glasses, basic frames, rushed order, as the billionaire charmed the hospital administration during their guided tour. 3 days had passed since the charity ball disaster, and she still couldn't believe he was actually here. And this is our pediatric research department, Dr. Morris announced proudly, gesturing to the modest lab where Linda had spent the last 5 years of her life. Linda ducked behind her computer screen. She hadn't told anyone about her dance with Jackson, assuming he'd forgotten all about her. Now here he was, immaculate in another designer suit, looking completely out of place among the worn equipment and coffee-stained desks. Dr. Keller, called Dr. Morris, come meet Mr. Pierce. He's considering a substantial donation to our research programs. Linda stood awkwardly, knocking over a stack of papers. As she bent to retrieve them, she heard a familiar voice. We've actually met, Jackson said, stepping forward to help her, though last time we were wearing more appetizers. When she looked up, his smile seemed genuine, not the practiced charm he'd shown the administrators. Linda felt her cheeks warm. Mr. Pierce, I didn't expect to see you again, she managed. Jackson, please. He handed her the papers. And I always follow up on interesting conversations about neural pathway regeneration in pediatric patients. Linda blinked. You remembered that? I remember everything important, he replied, holding her gaze a moment too long. Dr. Morris cleared his throat. Mr. Pierce has requested a detailed presentation of your current research, Dr. Keller. Perhaps in the conference room? 20. Minutes later, Linda found herself alone with Jackson Pierce, explaining her research to possibly the most powerful man she'd ever met. The strangest part? He was actually listening. So this protein could potentially help children recover from traumatic brain injuries? He asked, leaning forward. Linda nodded enthusiastically. Yes, but we need more advanced equipment to isolate and test it properly. With sufficient funding, she stopped herself. I'm sorry, I don't mean to pressure you. Pressure me, Jackson laughed. Do you know how many people try to get my money every day? You're the first person who seems uncomfortable asking. Linda adjusted her glasses nervously. I'm a scientist, not a saleswoman. That's exactly why I'm here, Jackson said. Honesty is rare in my world. A silence fell between them, strangely comfortable. Linda noticed Jackson had the tiniest scar above his right eyebrow, humanizing his otherwise perfect features. Have dinner with me, he said suddenly. Linda stared at him. Excuse me? Dinner. You know that meal people eat in the evening? I'd like to continue our conversation. His confident exterior slipped slightly, unless you'd rather not. Why would you want to have dinner with me? Linda asked bluntly. I'm sure you have supermodels lined up around the block. Jackson's expression softened. Supermodels rarely discuss neural pathway regeneration. He paused. And none of them looked at me the way you did when you thought I was just a random guy at a party. Linda considered him carefully. I'm not a charity case, Mr. Pierce. Jackson, he corrected. And I know that. This isn't charity. Then what is it? Curiosity, he admitted. You're unlike anyone in my usual circles. It's refreshing. Linda surprised herself by nodding. Fine. Dinner. But I choose the place, and I pay for myself. Jackson grinned. Deal. That evening, Bradley watched in disbelief as Jackson changed his tie for the 3rd time. You're nervous, Bradley observed, scrolling through his tablet. I've never seen you nervous. I'm not nervous, Jackson insisted. I just respect someone who values substance over style. Bradley raised, an eyebrow. She's taking you to a diner in Queens. Exactly, Jackson said, selecting a more modest watch than his usual. Authentic. The diner was everything Jackson expected: vinyl booths, laminated menus, and waitresses who called everyone hon. What he didn't expect was how much he would enjoy it. Linda arrived in jeans and a simple blouse, her hair in a loose ponytail instead of the severe bun. Without the sauce stains and panic, Jackson could see her more clearly. Her eyes were a striking hazel behind her glasses, and her smile transformed her entire face when she allowed herself to relax. Over burgers and milkshakes they talked, for hours, about her research, his company, books they'd read, and places they'd traveled. Linda challenged his views on healthcare innovation, and Jackson found himself defending positions he'd never had to articulate before. "You know," Linda said, dipping a fry in ketchup, "you're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "An arrogant billionaire throwing money around to feel important," she admitted. "Not someone who asks questions and actually listens to the answers." Jackson laughed. "Don't tell anyone. You'll ruin my reputation." As they walked out of the diner, a sudden downpour caught them by surprise. Linda pulled out a compact umbrella barely big enough for one. "Share?" she offered, holding it up. Jackson ducked under it, necessarily close to her. The rain drummed on the nylon above them, creating a private world in the midst of Queens. "I had a good time tonight," he said quietly. "Me too," Linda admitted. "But this doesn't make sense, you know. Your world and mine, they don't intersect." Jackson looked down at her. "They're intersecting right now." Before she could respond, he leaned down and kissed her, gently, briefly, leaving both of them surprised. "I should go," Linda whispered, stepping back. "Linda, this isn't a fairy tale, Jackson. Monday morning, I'll still be a researcher. With student loans, and you'll still be, well, you." As she walked away in the rain, Jackson stood watching, completely soaked and completely captivated. Back in his penthouse, he found himself staring out at the Manhattan skyline, still thinking about her smile. "How was your diner experience?" Bradley asked, entering with some documents. "I need to see her again," Jackson said simply. Bradley sighed. "The board meeting is tomorrow, and the Reynolds acquisition." "Schedule it all," Jackson interrupted, "but also find out everything you can about pediatric brain research funding. I think it's time Pierce Innovations expanded its medical division." As he turned from the window, Jackson realized something startling. For the first time in years, he was thinking about someone else's dreams instead of just his own. 2 weeks passed with no word from Jackson Pierce. Linda told herself it was for the best. Their worlds were too different. The kiss was just a moment of rain-induced madness. She returned to her research, trying not to check her phone every 5 minutes. "You're distracted," noted her colleague Penny over lunch in the hospital cafeteria. "This isn't like you." Linda poked at her salad. "Just tired. The new trials are demanding." Penny said skeptically. "It wouldn't have anything to do with that billionaire who toured our department, would it? The one who couldn't take his eyes off you?" Linda nearly choked on her water. "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Because the department suddenly received a massive anonymous donation specifically for your research project." Linda's fork clattered to her plate. "What?" Before Penny could elaborate, Linda's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check the hospital's main entrance. J." Despite herself, Linda rushed to the lobby. Through the glass doors, she saw Jackson standing beside a sleek car, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. She pushed through the doors. "You donated to my research?" "Hello to you, too," he said with a small smile. "Jackson, you can't just throw money at people when you disappear for 2 weeks." His smile faded. "I wasn't throwing money at you. I believe in your research." He ran a hand through his hair. "The disappearing part wasn't planned. The Reynolds acquisition turned hostile, and I've been in emergency meetings day and night." Linda crossed her arms. So, I'm supposed to believe that the great Jackson Pierce couldn't find 5 minutes to send a text? I wanted to see you in person, he admitted, to tell you that I can't stop thinking about you, about us. There is no us, Linda said, trying to ignore the fluttering in her chest. There's you in your penthouse, and me in my tiny apartment with 3 roommates. Then let me show you something, Jackson said, opening the car door. Please. Against her better judgment, Linda got in. They drove to a construction site in Brooklyn, where Jackson led her into a half-finished building. What is this? Linda asked, stepping carefully over cables. Jackson gestured around proudly. The future Pierce Medical Research Center, focusing on pediatric neurological conditions. Linda stared at him. You're building a research center? Because of one? Conversation? Because it's important, Jackson corrected. And yes, because you showed me why it matters. He hesitated. I want you to run it. Me? Linda nearly laughed. I'm a researcher, not an administrator. You're passionate and brilliant, Jackson countered. The administrative stuff can be learned or delegated. Linda shook her head in disbelief. This is insane. You barely know me. I know enough, Jackson said, stepping closer. I know you care more about helping others than impressing people. I know you see the real me, not just my bank account. Their eyes locked, and Linda felt her resolve weakening. Then her phone buzzed. A colleague needed her urgently at the hospital. I have to go, she said. This is all too much, too fast. Jackson nodded. Think about it. No pressure. That evening, Bradley found Jackson working late in his office. The board has concerns, Bradley said carefully. About? Your, personal interest in this medical venture. And Dr. Keller. Jackson's jaw tightened. My personal life isn't their business. When it affects company decisions, it becomes their business, Bradley said gently. They're questioning your judgment. Jackson stood abruptly. My judgment built this company from nothing. And now you're risking it all for a woman you just met, Bradley pointed out. Is she worth it? The question hit Jackson like a physical blow. Was Linda worth risking everything he'd built? The answer came to him with surprising clarity. The next morning, Linda received an urgent summons to the hospital boardroom. Her heart sank when she saw Jackson there in a formal suit, his expression unreadable. Mr. Pierce has an announcement, Dr. Morris said excitedly. Jackson stood. I've decided to move forward with the research center with full funding, regardless of who runs it. His eyes met Linda's. I realize now that imposing my vision on you wasn't fair. Your career path is yours to choose. After the meeting, Linda followed Jackson to the hallway. So that's it? You're backing off? I'm respecting your boundaries, he replied stiffly. Isn't that what you wanted? I wanted you to see me as an equal, not a project. I have always seen you as my equal, Jackson said quietly. Perhaps the only person who is. The sincerity in his voice stopped Linda cold. Then why the grand gestures, the research center, the job offer? Because I'm not good at this, Jackson admitted. In my world, problems get solved with money and power. But you can't be solved. You can't be acquired or impressed. A smile touched his lips. It's incredibly frustrating and completely wonderful. Linda felt the walls around her heart crumbling. I don't need grand gestures, Jackson. I just need to know this is real. It's the most real thing I've ever felt, he said simply. Before she could respond, the hospital PA system crackled. Code Blue, pediatric wing. Linda's eyes widened. That's Jamie, my patient. She sprinted down the hallway, Jackson following close behind. In the pediatric room, a small boy lay unresponsive as doctors worked frantically. Linda grabbed his chart, brain working at lightning speed. His neurons are rejecting the treatment, she muttered. We need the protein isolate from your research, Jackson finished, understanding immediately. It's experimental, Linda said. We'd need emergency approval, which takes— Not for me, Jackson said, already dialing. Make the medical case. What followed was a blur of phone calls, favors called in, and Jackson Pierce using every ounce of his influence. Within hours, the experimental treatment was approved and administered. As they waited for results, Linda looked at Jackson with new eyes. You didn't just throw money at the problem. You understood the science. I listen when you talk, he said simply. When Jamie stabilized, the relief was overwhelming. In the quiet of the hospital lounge afterward, Linda finally allowed herself to cry, from stress, from relief, from everything. Jackson held her without a word, his expensive suit getting soaked with her tears. I'm not usually this emotional, she hiccuped. I'm not usually this invested in pediatric medicine, he countered with a smile. Looking up at him, Linda finally saw the truth. This isn't about different worlds, is it? It's about fear. I've been afraid of not belonging in your world, of not being enough. Jackson brushed her hair back tenderly. And I've been afraid of not deserving someone as genuine as you. So, what now? Linda whispered. Now, Jackson said. We stopped being afraid. 6 months later. The Pierce Medical Research Center opened with considerably less fanfare than typical Pierce ventures. Linda, as chief research officer rather than director, her choice, gave a passionate speech about the future of pediatric medicine. In the audience, Jackson watched with pride, Bradley beside him. The board is pleased with the positive press, Bradley noted. Your approval ratings have never been higher. I don't care about approval ratings, Jackson said. Not anymore. After the ceremony, Linda joined him in a quiet moment away from the crowds. Not regretting giving up your cushy lab for all this responsibility? Jackson asked. Linda smiled. I didn't give up anything. I gained a platform to do more good. She adjusted her new glasses, stylish but practical, like the woman herself, and a rather persistent boyfriend. Persistent, huh? Jackson grinned. Is that my defining quality? That, and the fact that you saw me, really saw me, when I was just the awkward woman covered in appetizers. Jackson pulled her close. You were never just anything. And you were certainly never ugly inside or out. Well, Linda said, straightening his tie, you weren't so bad yourself once I could actually see you clearly. As they laughed, together, surrounded by the reality they had built together, both realized they had found something neither money nor science could quantify, a love based not on appearances or status, but on seeing the true beauty in each other.